Folks, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of the Bordello. We are making a triumphant return to the pod at long last. We took a little break. I went into hiding as my Kill Tony set came out. My Kill Tony set, which was okay. It was fine. I will say very little prepares you for the experience of going on Kill Tony. You could mentally try to prepare for it. Until you're up there, you don't really understand how differently your brain operates to when you normally do stand-up. Normally, the stakes are much lower, but the stakes are very high on Kill Tony because you don't want to look incompetent. And so I think I've gained a real appreciation for the regulars on that show who go up and are able to stay in the pocket because obviously they're comfortable with it now. So there's a different threshold of, tolerability of stress that they could tolerate. It's a comfort zone for them now that they're operating in. They're comfortable when, going up on Kill Tony. But I can imagine that the first time or even the first couple of times it might have been really challenging to get into the headspace where you're just, at ease. And it was a good learning experience. I'm happy that I survived it. I'm grateful to the guys on the panel and to the hosts and to Tony and Redban and Norton and Ari for being good to me. And it was kind of cool. Got to speak to most of them just in private after the show and got some good feedback and good advice that we'll take in stride. So that's fun. It's a thing that happened. And, it was what it was. It was what they call a learning experience. A little bit of I'd say a net positive overall, but still a good kind of a perspective shifter, just in terms of how you do stuff on stage that you think goes well most of the time, and you realize how important it is to have the correct setup for shit, which is stuff that you intuitively already know. But then when you go up and do something that generally does well and you do it cold, it could be very abrasive, jarring for people watching it. Like even I go back and watch my set and I'm like, oh, that was a decision you made to open with the joke you opened with. It's like, so I'd have probably done it a little differently if I could have done it over again. But maybe we'll get a chance someday. Who knows? But onward and upward. It was fun. Coming out of hiding now to finally come back to the pod and do what we do best, which is, we will be putting out weekly pods again. I've been kind of in hiding for a little while now, but I think it's appropriate that we come back with an Azzurri post-game pod. This will be coming out probably the day after Italia Belgium. Post-Italy game pods are what our bread and butter is. It's what the diaspora needs is what I like to tell myself, to give myself the get up to sit down and start waffling about the Italian national team like I'm some great authority on them and on football analysis. I'm just a humble man with a mic who has eyes and a big mouth. So I will be looking to break down what happened in the match yesterday. We beat Belgium 1-0. Good result. Interesting game. The game itself probably feels, if you go back and rewatch the key moments, I think it kind of feels like a proper tournament match. One where, because it's very rare in a knockout game in a tournament, which this wasn't a knockout game, but in a knockout game against, top opposition, when you're Italy and you're playing a team like Belgium, even if you win, it's very rare that you'll dominate a game. You'll often be made to sweat a little bit. Chances will be given up. This was one of those games. Donnarumma in goal had to step up a couple times. A little bit of luck went our way, but overall, relatively defensively solid. Probably could have put the game to bed a little earlier when Matteo Retegui was put on goal 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper and had his attempted finish parried. But overall, very positive. And there are a few takeaways from the game here that we're going to have to get into on this pod. There's a lot that we're going to have to talk about going into the France game in a couple days that are a little bit more, I guess, kind of like existential, for lack of a better word. Because Italy have now qualified for the quarterfinal of the Nations League, which is fantastic. It's great. And the Nations League, by the way, not just because my country's doing well, but I found it to be a very enjoyable competition. I like the format a lot more now. I like the idea that there's going to be less of a gap between the group, getting out of the group qualifying phase straight to the final. I like the fact that there's going to be a larger knockout round with a quarterfinal and a semifinal. I think that's better. It makes it feel like a more, serious competitive thing. But so now that we've qualified from the group, I think it's official. Like the Renaissance has taken place. The rebirth under Spalletti since the Euro has been positive for what'll now be, 3 international breaks. Unless we get killed against France in a couple days, it'll overall have been a very positive turnaround. And there's a few things that I want to look at here. One is Spalletti, the coach. I also want to look at players that have been included into the side and some that haven't, and kind of consider what may happen in the case of those players. Now, before we get into that, I just want to say, so we haven't recorded a pod for a little while. And again, we're back. We're putting out weekly episodes after these Italy post-game pods. It's imperative that we do that. I know. It's good for the brain to work shit out. I mean, fucking it was a presidential election. Fucking Kill Tony came out. Fucking several things have happened in my own life that I've wanted to rant about that I just haven't. It's almost at a point now where there have been so many notes I've taken of just shit that I've wanted to just yell about on the pod that we almost have to wipe the slate clean and just start from the Italy game and kind of go from there. It's not good to take as big a break from the pod as we have. So we won't be. But before we do get into like the game, there is one thing that I kind of want to just talk about a little bit, which is the fact that I was in Toronto last weekend, and we're a Montreal-based pod. We're a proud Montreal pod, even though I shit on people from and Italians from Montreal in particular much of the time, which is well-deserved. It's well-deserved. I mean, if you've been listening to the pod for a while, you'll be familiar with the lore, and you'll be a little bit more familiar with how Italians in Montreal, which is a community that, I'm kind of from, operates and how they behave and such. But as ever, if you are new, it's important that I give a little context. Italians in Montreal don't speak English. They think in English in their head, but they don't speak the English language. They're not proficient in it. I was in Toronto a couple days ago on a trip with another couple of wops, good people, great people. But at one point, I'm speaking to one of them, and I say something along the lines of, I see that this company has opened up in Toronto. I'm not a big fan of how the Montreal outfit is run. And one of the people I was there with said, what? The Montreal what? And I just said, never mind. I'm not going to explain. I'm going to explain Al Capone and what the Chicago outfit was and how you could use outfit in a context outside of, wardrobe and attire. Just no. I'm at my wits' end. I don't even try with them anymore. It's what's the point? I don't even bother. These are adults. They've had an opportunity to absorb information, to absorb skills when they were little children, when their brains were knowledge sponges, and some of it just didn't take, and it's not the time to change. These are people that are employed, that are part of professional orders, that are some of them are making more money than me. And it's like, what am I going to say? God bless them. They're living. That's fine. We can't have, there are certain things that are going to get lost in conversation that you're not going to understand, and it is what it is. It's fine. Be a good person. I don't know. Dedicate your life to God. Fuck it. I don't care how you sound. I don't care what you say. I don't care how you speak. I don't care how well you read. Sometimes I forget. And yeah, I'm a cunt. I know. I know. I sound like a cunt. But it's like these are the people that I'm comfortable around. It's a curse. Around Italian people, I'm kind of comfortable. But then I try to speak to them, and I'm an alien. I'm a fucking alien to these people. I'm giving political analysis about the U.S. election. And then it's going in one ear and out the other like a fucking, I don't know. I'm not a real man. I'm not familiar with terminology to do with firearms and stuff. A gun up against their earlobe. Pew! Bullet goes straight through the cranium and out the other earlobe. Or whatever. Ear hole. See, what position am I in to adjudicate who sounds smart and doesn't? I don't even know basic biology. Earlobe. Isn't the lobe the floppy part? Or is the lobe the hole? See, I don't even know. I'm a moron. I don't really know. But anyway, I'm giving political analysis. I'm giving a read on why, I don't know, Donald Trump did well in the election, and I don't know. I'm giving my take on on how the Republican Party has largely been flipped by Trump. Because at one point, the Republicans were kind of like these warmongers. When I was a child, they were the party of war, who wanted nothing more than to get involved in foreign conflicts in an effort to, I guess in theory, to improve the U.S.'s economic prospects by fucking shit up in areas that had resources. But there was also a deep element of, and this is why it was a bipartisan thing, which is why when Obama took over after Bush, this whole practice carried on. But there was a bipartisan thing where people on both sides of the political aisle in the U.S. would largely, profit personally as well through, I don't know. I wasn't there, but from what I hear, from what I read, lobbyists and large interest groups and large companies who might have, compromised some of the decision-making of the decision-makers in power. So I'm talking to these wops about how, hey, I find it interesting how the Republicans used to be these warmongers, and now the script is kind of flipped, where the guy who heads the Republican Party, Donald J. Trump, not a perfect human by any stretch of the imagination. I'm Canadian, so what do I care? I mean, I'd rather there be fewer wars. It would make me feel better. I don't get off seeing that there are wars where people get killed in foreign countries. I'm not going to pretend that it keeps me up at night. I fucking, I want to eat steak and wear Tom Ford cologne. I don't really get, as long as I've been alive. I'm in North America, you know what I'm saying? There's never been a war going on in North America for as long as I've been alive, really. There have been Cold Wars, there have been kind of proxy wars, but there's never been, the front lines have never been in North America as long as I've been alive, which is why, my family migrated here after a war. In my mind, wars are things that happen in other parts of the world, like Europe, Yugoslavia, Eastern Europe, Africa, the Middle East, whatever. So it's so far away. I don't. You think I'm being kept up at night by the fact that the people are dying in other countries? Well, no. What am I going to lie to you? Do I think it's fundamentally good? No. I'm a deeply self-centered person, like most psychos who live in North America. We just want to wake up and watch Instagram stories about how to make cupcakes. So, yeah, I'm not paying close attention to this shit all the time. I'm not an activist, but I don't think it's good. If I could snap my fingers and make it go away, I would say, yeah, all right. It'd probably be better if we not instigate, shit abroad. And we are going to talk about the Italy game, by the way. I don't know. I'll throw chapters on this on YouTube. If you've tuned out already, I mean, stato buono. I'll never see you again, I guess. But fucking, you see, you see Sandro Tonali in the fucking thumbnail of this pod. some guys talking about Kiltony and U.S. foreign policy for 15 minutes. But look, we're weaving. We're weaving. One thing I appreciate about Donald Trump is the weave. So you gotta to paraphrase Trump, you gotta be smart to weave, and you gotta be smart, by deduction, to follow the weave. So if you've been able to follow this pod 15 minutes in, God bless. It's a mental exercise in concentration, which is probably good because most people have ADD now. I know I sure as shit do. So this is actually kind of like lumosity. It's a brain training exercise to just follow my train of thought, which it's a good exercise for me too because I'm losing my train of thought right now. But okay, so foreign, Jesus Christ, yeah, is Trump a perfect human? No, he probably committed kind of legal fraud that he got off on charges of, for like 2 decades. He got into really dicey businesses, and that's fine. He's doing what he's supposed to do as a business guy, looking out for his own interest. That's fine. No one said that he's the Pope. But one thing about him is that he always preached non-interference abroad. So I'm talking to these wops about how it's interesting how at one point the Democrats were a little bit less on paper, they were a little bit less in favor of interference in foreign conflicts. And now the script is kind of, completely flipped, where the Democrats and, the Harris campaign were kind of the only side that, of the two that would have really, been beholden to, shall we say, the more malevolent actors in the U.S. Political system. But so I'm talking about this to the people I'm traveling with, and it's like, fucking, why am I even bothering? People get tuned out. People get tuned out when I'm talking about this. We're on a road trip to Toronto. We drove there. It's like a 5-6 hour drive. And, it's like 4 days after the U.S. election, so it comes up in conversation. And as I'm talking, and again, I know you're going to have to take my word on this because we're like 20 minutes into this pod and I've been weaving like a motherfucker, and I get that it might be a tough sell here if I tell you that I'm actually concise and being specific with my speech, as Jordan Peterson would say, to be. But because, again, I know I could be all over the place. If you've listened to this pod before, you'll know that. If you've listened to this episode of this pod, you're seeing it on full display here. But when I tell you that we're in the car, the election talk is going on, and I'm dialed in. I'm giving a very specific point that I think is pretty concise, and I get to the point right away. People I'm there with are just fucking, they're out. 30 seconds in, they're gone. They're wavering elsewhere, and they're thinking of where we're going to have brunch. They're thinking of where we're going to shop. And that's, that's fine. That's fine. It's who they are. God love them. My point is this. I'm kind of comfortable around them because I still, I don't know. They don't really actively upset me to the point that they don't get it. And by that, I mean, yeah, I might talk to them about an opinion I have about geopolitics, and they might get a little lost. But generally, they're sharp. They're paying attention. They just trust stuff, ultimately, which is nice. Some of the more educated people that I know that I went to school with don't have the same distrust. Because they've been part of institutions, because they studied in institutions, they fucking don't distrust them. Many of them want to work in said institutions. So, I don't want to do this whole hack thing of being like, yeah, Italians do this and manja cakes do this. That's not what I'm saying. But it's also kind of what I'm saying, in that people that aren't of an Italian background, I sort of, I don't know, whatever. People that aren't like an immigrant background, I generally just don't. They bore me. They bore me is what it is. They're not racist enough. It's not good to be racist, but I do find it funny that if you're around Italians, it's entertaining because there are people that are legitimately unironically racist. Now, I could be there watching them like circus monkeys. Like, yeah, all right. I can egg them on. That's fun. That's fun. There's no perfect system. Anyway, look, so I'm in Toronto with these people, and Toronto is a vapid, fucking soulless city, man. I just think I may not be happy anywhere. I complain about Montreal all the time, and then I go to Toronto, and I'm like, oh, well, at least we're not this. Well, at least we're not these people. This is a neighboring city, 6 hours away by car, and yet I go to Toronto and I feel like I'm on I don't know. I feel like I'm in another country because Quebec is a little bit unique. Quebec has a little bit more flair. We have the French, which creates a little bit more of a joie de vivre. It creates a little bit more of piss and vinegar. I don't know. I went to watch a Habs Leafs game at Scotiabank Arena with my buddy. We're both Habs fans. I couldn't believe how fucking quiet it was. It's a smaller arena than the Bell Center in Montreal, which is, kind of like the mecca of hockey, I guess, if you're going to watch it anywhere in North America. But there's not the same energy. And it's a Saturday night. Like, Habs Leafs, two huge rivals. Not necessarily the most equally matched teams at the moment, but big rivals. Saturday night. It's not corporate at all. Like, everyone at the game has a jersey. But it's quiet. It's a fucking library. Even when they score a goal, it's not electric. There aren't enough drunk, angry French people. It adds something to the experience of being at a Habs game, a hockey game in Montreal, or just being in the city of Montreal at large. It doesn't feel as vapid. I don't know why. It's hard to explain. It's hard to put your finger on. Toronto feels a little bit more sterile. It feels like there's certainly more money to spend. Now, again, these are not people that, you have a nice car and you're revving it. And Drake's from the city now, so it's cool. And yeah, look at me, suck my dick. Who knows who's in this car? Maybe I'm Drake. Hey, ladies, look at me. Get moist. It's like, all right, you're in Toronto. Relax. You know what I'm saying? You're in Toronto and you're getting paid in Canadian dollars. You kind of, good for you. But, notwithstanding the fact that it's not, it's not LA. It's not Miami. It's like trying to be in a weird way. The old parts of Toronto are just a dump, and the new parts of Toronto are trying to be Miami. It's very weird. It all kind of feels like Hudson Yards, if you've ever been in New York, which is an area where, foreign money goes to shop and live, which is not what New York is supposed to be. New York is supposed to be, filled with people that work, that work union jobs. That's kind of what people think of when they think of New York. You don't want anything other than that, really. If you're traveling to New York for the first time, you want a guy who's a hard worker who makes pizza. That feels good. That feels New York. It's not Hudson Yards, but, it's an area of New York that Chinese people go to shop at. South American, affluent people who made money in crypto in South America, or fucking who have rich parents or whatever, kids of politicians, go to Hudson Yards and they go to shop. They go to shop there. That's like what Toronto feels like now. I went to Milos in Toronto, and I actually saw Sebastian Giovinco at the restaurant. And you know what I did? Sebastian Giovinco, by the way, like a pretty iconic player from my youth. I owned his jersey when I was 14 years old at Euro 2012. I was a little guy. He was a little guy. I loved him. I saw him, and I made eye contact with him, and he was there with a couple of people, but it wasn't a huge, group of it wasn't a party of like several, it was like just a couple people. It was an intimate thing. So, he was a few feet from me, and I did nothing. I didn't go talk to him, which is the correct move. That's the correct move, by the way. Like if you're gonna go to a restaurant in Toronto like Milos, okay? If you're gonna go to an expensive restaurant where all the women have lip filler and it's a scene. It's a scene. Everyone's got bouncy hair and they're wearing leather and they're wearing, like a flowy, silky blouse. That's a type of woman who's hoping that she'll marry a guy in law, finance, maybe medicine, maybe a guy who has a medical practice. Now, if you're lucky, maybe you'll have a cool guy who's in show business or something, or who's a content creator. But generally, there's so few of those fucking people that actually make money. God, you just want a guy who works for Scotiabank. That's what you want. You want a finance guy or a guy who owns a little business or something, maybe a little construction company. He's got a beard. He lines it up. He wears a cardigan. He's a little bit chubby, but it's fine. He's got money. That's all that really matters. And he's got the ability to pay for a fucking, a pair of expensive shoes for you. That's if you're with someone. If you're a lady who's going to Milos, who's single, you're hoping to meet one of those guys. That's who goes there. Now, ideally, they want to marry your fucking, hook up with a guy who plays for the Leafs. There was a guy from the Toronto Maple Leafs who went to the restaurant, who I ran into in the bathroom. I struck up a conversation with him because, we're just at the sink together. That's fine. That's acceptable. But if you're going to go to a restaurant like Milos, don't go to the celebrity there who you recognize and say, hey, big fan, shut up. That's for you. He doesn't care. He doesn't need that. He's Sebastian Giovinco. He got paid $11 million to play for Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia. $11 million US, tax-free for 2 years. He doesn't need your validation. He's good. He's 5'4", and he walks around like he's got the biggest dick in the room because he can. Because his life's good. He doesn't have any doubts about who he is. He's done what he's had to do. He's retired. He's on to the next phase. He chose to live in Toronto. He left Italy to go live in Toronto. It's highly unusual. That's a guy who's assured about himself. A lot of Italians can't leave home. They can't leave Italy because their fucking mom lives there. Giovinco doesn't give a shit. He's loaded. He could fly anyone in. He's married. He's got kids. He doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't need your validation. Now, yeah, he's a good guy, I think. I don't know. He'd probably appreciate it. But shut up. Let him be. You're at Milos. You don't get to do that at Milos. If you're at McDonald's, you can come up to him and say that. If you go to Milos and you say, hi, can I just get a picture with you? You've blown your cover. You got to fake it. You got to act like you're somebody that's done something with his life. Now, I've not. I fucking had a mediocre set on Kill Tony a week ago. And the best part of it was the fact that there was an interview. Thank God there was a fucking interview. Because if not, the set was what it was. You know what I mean? What the fuck have I done with my life? How many people are listening to this pod? 500 on YouTube. Are we even going to hit 500? I don't know. We fucking taking a break for 3 weeks because I'm fucking in my head all the time about, is it time to put out a pod or not? I don't know. I'm afraid that no one's going to listen anymore. Could have lost half the fucking audience. What the fuck have I done? But you're at Milos. You shut up. You bite the bullet. You pay the bill. You enjoy the octopus. And you leave everyone alone. That's it. That's all. Leave Giovinco alone when you see him anywhere other than at the bakery. If you see him out at a bougie place, you shut the fuck up and you play your role, which is you have to act like you're something as well. You have to act like you're something as well. Those are the social rules. And by the way, that is the best thing you could do. Like, some people might hear me say this and be like, wow, you sound insecure. What are you compensating for? What are you faking? Why are you pretending to be something you're not? It's because that's the rule when you go to a place like that. It's actually the most altruistic thing you could do is when you go to a fancy restaurant, you're inconspicuous, and you look like a person who has their own affairs in order. Whether you do or don't, doing that makes the experience better for the other people in the restaurant. That's all. That is all. If you see a person from reality television in a fucking restaurant like Milos, you don't go up to them. You just mind your business. Maybe you give them a nod and you keep walking if you make eye contact. That's all. That's all you do. And, yeah, the only reason it would be acceptable to go up to him is if you're also a footballer or something. Like, if you see another person who's in your field and you look up to them, then you could do it. But if you're like a sad guy who wanted to be a pro footballer and isn't, yeah, he knows. He assumes that most people he meets who are fans wanted to be pro footballers and they all watched him growing up and they didn't have what it took to be him. But yeah, that's those are the rules. Let's talk about this game. Let's talk about this game on balance here. Couple things. First of all, like, I just I will say this, like, what's the point of, like, Belgium existing? like it's a kingdom. I think they still have a king. I know it's where the European Union is based out of. Every time I see football being played in Belgium at that dump of a stadium, it just looks like a sad place. It looks like a sad place. It looks like a sad, rainy part of the world. The grass never looks good. The stadium is a dump. I think it's named after like a king or a prince. The team is made up of mostly people that probably, and again, this is fine. There's nothing wrong with this. Maybe on a broader, nationalistic identity issue, that there's a debate to be had about this. But the Belgian national team is made up like primarily of people that are not French or not Flemish. They're mostly people that have immigrated to Belgium, or kids of people that have immigrated to Belgium, which, like, whatever. Who cares? It's fine. But those people probably, like, in their hearts, feel very attached to another place. And by the way, this is, like, kind of true for Canada as well. This is definitely true for Canada as well. Like, I feel very closely attached to Italy. I do have an affinity with Canada, so I guess it is possible to have dual identity. But, fuck, man. It's like, you almost feel like all the people that are playing for the Belgian national team are playing for the Belgian national team because it is better for their career, not necessarily because they even feel like that proudly Belgian. The reason I say that is because it's been a bad vibe for a long time. Like, that team has not been able to come together and, take advantage of the fact that they had talent and create, like, a sense of unity. Like, their three biggest players, Hazard, De Bruyne, and Courtois, of the past, like, decade, were all actually, like, kind of probably, like, long-standing Belgian people. And it's like they still, I don't know, it's like they didn't have this fire within them to be like, yeah, all right, we're all proud to be united by our Belgian identity. They just all fucked each other's girlfriends, and they got in trouble, with their football association all the time. It's a bad vibe. I don't know. It's a weird team. And yet they're ranked higher than Italy somehow. We tied them and beat them twice in the last month. Like, can we please finally get those rankings corrected? I'm tired of seeing Belgium in the top 10 FIFA rankings, and I get that nobody takes FIFA seriously as an organization, but what the fuck is the point of having the rankings if you're going to have a Belgian team made up of people that nobody's heard of? Like, again, maybe that's on me, all right? I'm an adult now. I don't, like, play FIFA anymore. I don't know all the young prospects that are coming through every single national team, but I just feel like the Belgian national team is just made up of a bunch of fucking young, flairful immigrants who nobody knows. Like that, like every time I look at the Belgian national team, I just see a bunch of like African names that I don't really know or recognize. And again, maybe that's on me as a football fan, but I just see a bunch of names that kind of like I watch it and they all morph into one. Openda, Opoku, Cisse, Faez. I don't know any of these guys. How the fuck are they ranked more highly than the Italian national team right now? They haven't done anything in a major tournament for the past like 6 years. They've done nothing. The best midfielder in the world is from there. All right, well, you see the whole fucking team? They have a couple of good, strong players. Yeah, individually. Jeremy Doku, great winger. He wasn't in the lineup the other day. I don't know if he's injured or what. But like, I don't understand how the Belgian national team is held in as high regard as they are. It just feels like a team that exists. It doesn't feel like a team that's got any real like identity or passion. Their coach is in Belgian. Domenico Tedesco's, he's an Italian guy. They've had foreign coaches for the longest time. You could tell whether a national team is a serious operation based on whether or not their coach, the manager of the national team, is a national of that country. Okay? That's a wordy way of putting it. I'm going to repeat that. You could tell whether a national team is serious or not based on whether their manager is from the country or not. That's what I'm saying. So Italy will always have an Italian coach. Now, again, Italy has a great history and tradition of building up, good Italian coaches who have success abroad. But the French national team has always had French guys coach them. The Portuguese team has almost always had Portuguese guys coach them, except that's completely untrue, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's only about half the time that I've been around watching football that it's been a Portuguese guy. I think they have Roberto Martinez now. They have a Spanish guy. They've had Scolari in the past, who's Brazilian, which is, kind of fine because there's, I guess there's like a colonial aspect to it there where it's like, all right, I'm from Brazil, but I'm going to, my great-grandfather's from Portugal type of thing. But France have always had a French coach. I think Spain have always had a Spanish coach. England have not always had an English coach, which, by the way, you could argue that the English national team is not not serious, which is, something that I think their fans would probably take as a great affront because they are some of the more patriotic fans in all of Europe, almost to a fault. But like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I can't really take the Belgian national team seriously. It doesn't feel like they have a real identity. It's just like a bunch of guys from like the outskirts of Brussels that grew up playing football in schoolyards that play for the Belgian national team because it's where they're from. And I get that that's how national team football works, but it feels like they all have like deep love for wherever their parents come from. And as a result, I don't know. I just don't feel like they die for the flag. Italians have nothing. Like most of the Italian national team has fucking nothing other than Italy. They leave Italy and they feel lost. Italy's not necessarily a better off country, but they just feel more at home there. I don't know. The food's better. The cadence of life is familiar to them. So they feel like, even though Italy's a weird one where there's a lot of like infighting within the country, there's a real ability to almost maybe because of, the infighting that happens between provinces and stuff, like coming together as a unit for the national team is like a cathartic thing. And also they've won. So most people have seen a strong team over the years that they can kind of, get behind. And, it's a dream for a lot of kids to play for the national team of Italy. I feel like France has that as well. Like, even though France is made up, like, demographically of a very similar thing going on to what Belgium has, I do feel like a lot of people that grew up in France dream of playing for the French national team because they've succeeded. They've succeeded before. They've won World Cups. They've won 2, with teams that look like, whoever is in France, whoever's, playing football in France, who's looking up to these players and is able to see, oh yeah, that's a guy who looks like me. He comes from a similar background to me. He's from this, outskirt of Paris. His parents are immigrants. And look at him. Now he's playing for France. It's a beautiful thing. It's, the country gave him something. Gave him a sense of identity to, I don't know, whatever. It feels fine. England has the same thing going on. England has a similar thing going on where I feel like everyone that lives in England kind of wants to play for the English national team. There's no, I don't know, the Dutch team as well. So we're talking about like all the neighboring countries to the Belgians. I don't mean to dunk on them here, but I think I'm allowed to because they're ranked higher than us in the FIFA rankings, which is very odd. It doesn't feel real. They have an awful defensive core. They have for a very, a very long time. So, like the real test is going to come against France in a couple of days. The real test is going to come against France in a couple of days because that's that's sort of where the victory over France in the month of September is where we started gaining momentum, in this attempt at, Spalletti kind of having, a new page turned over. But I think it'll be a real test that'll be unlike anything else we've had so far. As long, by the way, we can lose that game, and even if it's tight, we're all right. Because, first of all, we qualified for the quarterfinal anyway, so who gives a shit? But also, you just want to be competitive and feel like there's something positive on display. If there's something positive on display, you could take those positives and you could just apply it and say, all right, good. We've got something good here. We're building something. We're brewing something. So, the actual players that were included here are interesting to me. Spalletti came out after the game the other day, after the Belgium game yesterday, and he said something along the lines of, and this is one of the things I like about him, is he said something along the lines of, we're Italy. Obviously, we have good personnel. We have good players that are at our disposal. All the issues were kind of situational. As Italy, as a footballing nation as strong as we are, we're always going to have the availability to call in new players who are going to have a certain ability. It's just about creating something with those guys. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But in the case of the summer, it didn't quite gel. There might have been other variables at play, like the fact that there was a lot of pressure and we were kind of panicking, kind of chasing our losses almost. But now we seem to have settled into something a little more positive, and it's not that shocking given the players that are available to him. And really, I think he seems to have done a good job of creating a harmonious thing where there's a good core of guys who are, reliably going to get called upon. And then anytime you get a couple of new faces into the side, they just kind of integrate into the way the team plays. Spalletti's a very stoic figure, and I gotta say, guys like me have been proven really wrong. Like I panicked a little bit in the summer and said he can't stay. It's a disgrace. He doesn't have it. But also deep down in the back of my mind, I kind of knew that there was a chance that if he just was given a shot, then he might be able to turn it around because he really didn't have that much of a shot at building anything prior to the Euro. And you could understand why in the Euro, with the pressure that comes with it and the need to win every game immediately, things could fall apart. Particularly if you're as indecisive as he was. He flip-flopped on a lot of ideas. But we're playing a little better now. Like, just optically, we're playing better, which is important. And we seem to have settled in. And it's just, it was almost like a reason why you would get rid of him in the summer, or a reason why you would have, past tense, gotten rid of him this summer, is the fact that he, failed. That was it. It was like, all right, well, he didn't do well at a major tournament, so the customary thing to do is to get rid of him. And, had I been the FA chief, I might have said, we got to get rid of him. But then it's like, to what end? To bring who in instead? So I think there was a real analytical look at things where it was examined whether or not it made any sense, any level of sense to try restarting a new project, when in fact there were a lot of players who could have been turned over, and that's what he's done. So that's really encouraging. I want to talk about the midfield here. What Spalletti's done with Samuele Ricci is beautiful to see. Now, Ricci was injured and had to drop out of the squad. The fact that he's a guy who we would have relied upon, this international break, after having just made 4 appearances after the Euro, when he didn't even make the Euro squad, is a great thing to see. You want new players like that to come into the team and to really establish themselves and to be, able to shine. It's not a surprise. If you see how he plays for Torino, he dictates how they play. He's the midfield, I guess, general. He's really the guy that kind of, lays out the pacing of their play and so on. He's been able to do that for the Italian national team, which has been great. Now he's injured, so we brought in Nicolò Rovella, who's been playing pretty consistently with Lazio. Now, Rovella's a guy who hasn't gotten a look in for the Italian national team ever. He's a guy who I've often liked. He's not that old. He's the same age as Fagioli. I think he's 23. So, his best years are still ahead of him. And I'm a Juve fan. I always liked Rovella more than Fagioli. We sold him off and kept Fagioli, and I just feel like if you look at, I don't actually know this for a fact, but I feel like if you look at the two players back to back, compare how many minutes they've played at the top flight in their careers, I think Rovella probably has played double the amount of minutes that Fagioli's played. Now, obviously, there was a whole season off that Fagioli had to take last year because of the ban for the gambling thing, but which is a hilarious thing to just gloss over. There was that gambling scandal. Whatever. We don't talk about that. just another day in in Italian football. Yeah, some kid fucking gambled his life away, and he had a real issue. But he's an Italian kid who was 22 years old. What do you expect? It's he's just being true to the culture. But no, so I do think that Rovella has had more minutes playing at the top flight. At Genoa, he played for a couple of years, I think, as a starter, who was forced into a position where he had to take responsibility for the team's play and so on. Fagioli's never had that because he's only ever really played at Juve. So, and it's harder to establish yourself at Juve. Fabio Miretti is a guy who started playing a lot at a young age, 2 years ago, and we just got rid of him. Now we loaned him out to Genoa, where he's not even playing a ton. There's a lot of value to playing a lot of minutes in the top flight. So Rovella's a guy who deserved the call. And I thought he had a pretty good debut. One thing that he didn't do as well as Ricci was he didn't switch the play as quickly. That was one thing that Samuele Ricci became, I think very important in the team for, was his ability to get the ball and head up, switch play. But very positive. A lot of guys named Nicolò. A lot of Nicos in this team. It's actually plausible that we field 6 Nicos at once. I'm just running through the numbers here. So we've got Nicolò Savona now, who got called up as a fullback from Juve, first time. Might make his debut in a couple days. You've got Nicolò Pisilli, who made his debut last time out. Spelt with 2 C's, like Machiavelli, but, audibly, same name. Nicolò Fagioli, who's not in the team right now. Nicolò Zaniolo, who's not in the team right now, but who has been in recent months. Nicolò Barella, and now Nicolò Rovella. It's they're all born within 6 years of each other. It's very weird, but it's a good name. It's a great name. I actually think it's a more satisfying name than the traditional male name Nicolò, which sounds a little effeminate, if we're being honest. But so I think the midfields. The interesting thing about the midfield is so Rovella got called up before Ricci dropped out, and when Samuel Ricci did drop out, it was Manuel Locatelli who got called back up, and he's a guy who Spalletti hasn't really given much attention to for the past 6 months. Spalletti tried to use Locatelli in the friendlies in March and kind of immediately shut the door to him and said he doesn't give us what we need. Now, I think Nicolò Fagioli, who's been given a chance on a couple of occasions to come in and try to give Spalletti what he wanted, hasn't done that. And so that's the reason why, I guess Luciano wants to bring in this guy who's playing a lot at Juve, who hasn't really had a look in since things have turned for the better. But I don't hate the idea of him coming off the bench. I don't think he should start for us based on how he plays, although he does play very positively. He has been playing, very, very directly for Juve. Apparently he has the most, I didn't even know this, but I didn't even know this until a couple days ago, but apparently he has the most line-breaking passes in Serie A at the moment, or one of, which is an impressive and relevant stat. Just tells you that when he gets the ball on the turn, he's looking to play forward, which is valuable. That is something that is in line with how Spalletti wants to play. But I don't even know if we need him, which is good. Like, there's a good amount of depth there. The forward position is a little bit odd. So let's talk about what happened to Federico Chiesa. First of all, does anyone know where Federico Chiesa is? Is he injured? Is he not good enough to play at Liverpool, who arguably are maybe the best team in the world right now? So that's fair, but it's unclear. Like he's gotten, I think, maybe 3-4 appearances under his belt. He's barely played like a full match. He's barely played a full game's worth of time since he signed for Liverpool. And the thing about Chiesa is a lot of people will point to the ACL injury and say, well, since he's had that thing happen to him, he's never been the same. I don't really agree with that at all. If you actually see him play, I still think he generally... Other Juve fans who probably watch Juve more than me, because I don't watch that intensely anymore. Like, I follow every game, but I don't sit down and I don't make an event of every Juve game. You know what I'm saying? I get distracted. I have fucking ADD. I'm watching the game, but I'm playing chess at the same time. So fuck me. What do I know? But I feel like every time I would see Chiesa play for Juve, he would still put his head down and try to drive forward. That's still his instinct. I don't know that he's physically impeded from doing that. And I think that in the World Cup, if we qualify next year or in 2 years, he should be there. Like, he might have to come back to Italy and get more playing time in order for that to happen. That's a possibility. He wouldn't be the first guy to go to England or to go to Liverpool in particular and, just not do well. But, think of Balotelli years ago. He fucking, fell off the map when he went to Liverpool, and that was kind of where it all started to go wrong for him in terms of getting called up to the Italian national team consistently. But you got to think, so yes, we've been succeeding without Chiesa, but there's room in the team for him. There is room in the team for him. And yes, we have, Zaccagni and Zaniolo are capable players. Zaccagni's had a pretty good season so far, actually, even though he hasn't been getting called up for a month. But Chiesa offers this thing where he's able to play a little bit more centrally, kind of off another striker. I know it's not his best position, but he's able to do that and float, which is good in a hybrid system like what Spalletti plays, where he likes guys to float from a central position out wide, kind of like Fratesi does sometimes. Like, Davide Fratesi is meant to float up and drift out right a lot of the time. So Chiesa is able to do that, definitely, on the left side. It's just that, he's not in the picture right now because he hasn't been playing, which is fair, and we haven't really needed him. But you got to think, we played Barella in a more advanced role the other day. I don't really know that you're getting less out of Chiesa than you are out of Barella. Yes, they play a little bit differently. Barella's better at moving the ball, but Chiesa's better at driving forward with it. So there's probably still room for him in the team. And you know what's funny is he kind of plays very similarly to Moise Kean, but he's got better ball control. Moise Kean's, I think, at the top of the Serie A scoring charts right now, and he deserves to keep getting called up. He had a hat-trick against, was it Udinese on the weekend? And he scored a hat-trick for Fiorentina a few days ago. He definitely deserves... we still have a fucking house phone that works here. I'm at my parents' house in the basement studio here, and... Okay, We actually got a call from somebody the other day who tried to scam us, and we needed to create a code word. I encourage you all to do the same. Stay woke, man. Stay woke. Don't fucking just cancel the fucking house phone. What are you doing, man? Fucking still having a house phone. It's just a phone for immigrants to call you. Bro, the house phone is literally for like people in a foreign country to call you at. That's it. And they all use WhatsApp now, so there's no fucking point in even having it anymore. I don't know. Look, so Chiesa. Oh boy. My concern is that he might continue to not play at Liverpool, might stay there for a year and collect a fat paycheck, might keep getting injured, periodically become healthy. And if we stop succeeding, people will call for him to get called up, even though he very clearly doesn't deserve to, which is a fun one. But then it's also like, if you don't call him up, who's your alternative? Moise Kean? Like, yeah, he's scoring. But Kean got a hat trick the other day, but he also had like one of the worst misses of the season that I've seen. I feel like every time he has the ball, he tries to drive toward goal, which is good. But it's like even when it works, I don't understand how it's working. He's just able to kind of take a defender on one-on-one. Then about 12 yards out, he sort of drives a hard shot into the bottom corner. Or tries to. I don't know. Again, he's not even the enemy. There's no issue with including a guy like him in the team, because if you have a forward who's scoring, then, great. He's a hot hand. They move similarly. But it's like, I don't know. Like if Francesco Camarda starts actually like scoring for Milan, which is, not likely, but it could happen. If Francesco Camarda in like a year starts growing into his body and starts scoring goals, include him immediately, because his upside is so much better than whatever Chiesa's could be. You know what? Chiesa's a decent player, but you know where it's going to be. You know where it's going to go. He's 27 years old now. This is it. He is who he is. Camarda at 17 in a year could be, a player who in 10 years could be 3 times as good as he is now. And if he's scoring now once in a while, include him so that he could grow with the team. Because we haven't had like a bona fide forward who we could depend on for a little while. Like Matteo Retegui is a guy who I think we're depending on now, but I don't think he's a guy who is going to be generational. I think he's a guy who we should continue to probably call up and will for the next 5 years. That's my guess. For the next 5 to 7 years, he'll be getting called up periodically, depending on how much he can continue to score. But like, I don't know. But like, there's a lot of mediocre younger forwards who just don't have it. Like Pietro Pellegrini has scored 2 in 2 games. Now, great. He's a guy who's only 23 years old. We kind of forgot about him. He made his first appearance at the age of 15 for Genoa. He's still around. He could get hot again. But are you really confident that if you call him up, he'll give you anything, that, I don't know, is any different to any other fucking random Italian forward who you'd want coming off the bench? I don't know. It's like if he was good enough, he'd have already kind of established himself by now. There are a lot of Italian forwards that exist that are probably going to be just okay, middling. Andrea Pinamonti, Lorenzo Colombo, probably Sebastiano Esposito. You have to look to the U21 team, really. That's kind of often where, whoever's scoring for the U21 team, who's also getting playing time in the top flight with their club, that's kind of who the next guy should be. So maybe it's, Pio Esposito, who's Sebastiano's little brother. He scores at a pretty high clip. But you never really know. That's the thing. But like, even if you look at these guys that were highly touted, like Pellegrini, I don't think that when he was like at the U21 level, he was scoring a ton. And scoring's a habit. If you're able to find the back of the goal at a, at youth level, you tend to be able to. Patterns of play are similar. You just have to make the same runs, and you'll actually have better guys at higher levels, at the senior level, that are able to find you more easily. So I think Camarda's a guy who it's going to be fun to watch, because he's going to be like, the first fucking post-Gen Z guy to probably play for the Italian national team if, things go the way they're trending toward. But there's a lot of risk with that. Like, he's posting shit with his way inferior, Milan U23 team teammates. Like, understand this. Most of the guys that are good at 17 are going to be completely irrelevant and playing in the 3rd division somewhere in 6 years. That's just a fact. Or in 10 years, like, yeah, they're going to be playing in fucking Serie C, most of them. There's this one guy who's good. His name is Kevin Zeroli. He's some, like, I don't know. He's some winger. Plays for, like, the Milan youth teams. I think he plays for, like, the Italy U17 or U18 or U19 team. He's all right. He's decent. He probably won't do anything. He's like Camarda's best friend. So they post shit together. They share posts. Camarda's got to realize that he's bigger than all those kids. He's better than all of them. He shouldn't be fucking sharing. He shouldn't be doing a collab post with any of them. He should be distancing himself from them and just being, thinking about being the man all the time. That's it. That's literally it. It's almost as you could, just as he could have his life ruined by a woman who's like, he's 16, so fuck, there might be a 21-year-old fox who like tries to go for him now, who's got a way more developed brain. Like, that wouldn't be ideal. But by the same token, you could get like sucked into weird patterns of behavior with like fellow stupid youth players who are coming into money, who think they're all that because they're playing for the Italian youth teams. But it doesn't really mean anything until you start doing shit at senior level. So, anyway, look. Overall, like, it's a random tirade. Look, the point of, I think we started talking about Chiesa here, and my prediction is that he probably won't play a single game for us until 1 year from now. I think in a year, he'll probably have left Liverpool, and he'll probably be getting game time somewhere, and he'll probably be doing well enough that he'll be able to, get some goals, and then he'll be an automatic guy in consideration for spots on the national team. But it's so crazy how he was like the best guy that played for us at the Euro this summer, and we got rid of him, and now we're playing more fluidly through the middle. I don't even know if our system really like works with a pure winger like him. So we'd have to play in a more central role, and that's where it gets weird. Because Spalletti's kind of enjoyed using or deploying a midfielder who kind of floats up a little bit and keeps like a lone striker. Because, like Cambiaso and Di Marco provide so much width on their own that we almost don't need pure wingers. So, I don't know. Maybe we'll do a deep dive on the U21 setup at some point. Maybe after the France game, because it'll be like the last game for a few months. Maybe it'll be fun to kind of take a look at things from like a wider lens. Get analytical in that sense. Anyway, so we'll put out another pod after the France game. That'll be fun. We'll kind of do a little post-game preamble there as well before getting back to the regular, more fun, messy weekly episodes. Yeah, look, overall, nothing to really complain about right now. Nothing to really complain about. The Nations League feels like a more serious competition than ever. And if we can go on and win this thing, which we look like we're in, a real, in a real good spot to maybe do, that's a good spot. Like, that's a really good spot to kind of build off of, because most of the core of the team is young enough that they'll still be around in 2 years, and you can kind of keep them as the core while you just integrate new players in periodically, which would be fucking great. So, I really enjoyed watching the team play. I really enjoyed the fact that we got a nice clean sheet this time, which have been harder to come by. A little bit messy, again, like I said at the top of the pod, like in a lot of tournament games, this felt like a little bit messy where we could have had an equalizer, but, Italy winning 1-0 against a decent opponent in a game that they have to win to attain a certain, outcome, which in this case qualifying for the quarterfinal of this tournament, that's a positive right there. Like, that's true to the roots. And, Alessandro Buongiorno didn't look bad. Like, at the middle of the defense with Bastoni out left, playing, combining with Di Marco in the way that he typically does. I know that everyone loves Riccardo Calafiori, but I don't know, this kind of worked as well. It's actually good to have different options that might work and not, one single combination of players that works all together. Giovanni Di Lorenzo had a monster game. And, like, a lot of people wanted his head on a spit. But Spalletti stuck, he stuck by him. He stood to his guns. And it's part of that stoicism that, I think has done him so well over the years. So the real test is going to be in a couple days. So we'll check back after that and we'll see what happens. So if you're tuning in for the first time, hit sub, toss a like, helps us out. And we'll see you in a couple of days. So, much love. Alla prossima. Ciao.